My name is Matt Baumgartner, and I'm the president of the Duluth Area Chamber of Commerce. We have, thank you, Jill. Thank you. Yeah. Hey.
I'm a theater person that applauds,
I'll always take
different things.
I want to acknowledge that we have a wonderful staff. Dan Fanning is our vice president and does a master of PR and communications and always helps organize these things. Kathleen Prevette is our director of events and board operations. She is the brains behind getting these things organized. And then Leah Colts is here with us, who's our director of external relations and communications, and is often behind the scenes, but is a huge reason why we are able to be strategic with our communication. So thank you to my team. I also want to point out just why this is so important to the Chamber of Commerce. Sometimes people ask, why is this business group getting involved in these sorts of things? And I've talked about it before at Duluth and St. Louis County at the Capitol, at our annual dinner. But one of our overarching central pieces of our mission is to create an environment that is best to raise children in. And in doing that, we end up creating a better environment for businesses to thrive, better opportunities for workforce, overall community progress, and quality of life. And those are all things that we should be reminded of. So that's why it's important to us. It's important to our members because as they try to recruit and retain talent, one of the first things that people look at is the school district. I was talking with Rosie ahead of time, and when they relocated here, that was the first thing they looked at 30 years ago. And that remains true today when we talk to our largest employers. Dan and I have a lot of meetings with them, and we hear from them all the time when they're recruiting. It's one of the primary things they look at. Housing, childcare, school districts. So that's why it matters to us. I want to thank the Boat Club. Jeff Anderson has been so gracious in helping support and sponsor this for us today. Jeff's obviously a community leader, and he serves on our board of directors. So thank you, Jeff, for helping organize this. Thank you to the Boat Club for their support. Make sure you eat here soon. Amazing restaurant, amazing views, as you can tell. The D&T sponsors all of our forums with us, and so I want to thank the D&T for being here today, for supporting this. It means a lot to us. And Fox 21 is a great partner of ours and is here for this as well, so thank you. I also want to thank our panel, Superintendent John Magus. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
John Schwetman, who works as a professor at UMD and is also a lead on this campaign. Lindsay Kern, who's been a dear friend for many, many years, is a huge advocate for the district and for opportunities for children, and works with Kern & Company, so thank you, Lindsay. And then Jill Lofold, also a friend, school board member, and very involved in the school for, what has it been, about 5 years now that you've been involved in this?
Yeah, probably 5.
Yeah, you're too young for anything longer than that. So thank you to our panel. I'm going to start by having them all introduce themselves, give us a little bit of background as to what brings them here, and then we're going to turn it over to the superintendent for a brief presentation just about the referendum, and then just for run of show, we're going to have questions directed at the panel, and then we're going to leave about 20 minutes for questions from the audience. So with that, I'll turn it over to John. Why don't you start, and we'll work our way down for introductions and why you're connected to this referendum project.
Sure. My name's John Magus, and I'm superintendent of Duluth Public Schools. It's a huge honor to be superintendent here. I was hired in March of 2020, an exciting time to come to the district, and I'm here to support the referendum because I believe that we're at a very important crossroads for our school district. It's important for us to consider where we are and where we can be. I think we have very good schools in Duluth, but I know we can have great schools. We have a strong strategic plan, and we need the resources to make sure that we can work on that as well as the unfinished learning of our students.
Hi again, my name is John Schwetman, and I'm the chair of the Duluth for Education Levy Committee. The school district can provide a lot of information about the levy, but it has to remain neutral. The levy committee exists to give that persuasive edge to the campaign. We'll come to you and ask you just to vote yes, and that's what I'm committed to doing. Because of my commitment to public education, I teach at a publicly funded institution at the University of Minnesota Duluth, and I have 2 kids who've been products of a publicly funded ISD 709. Wonderful experience for both of them. And I'm throwing myself behind this effort out of my love for Duluth. I think that our funding for education is integral to our success and our happiness as a community.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Kern. I am a product of Duluth Public Schools. I was a coach for a little over a decade with Duluth Public Schools, and now I'm the proud parent of 2 Duluth Public Schools students, one in middle school and one in high school. So here today on this panel, not so much to lend my expertise. All 3 of these people around me have devoted their lives to education, so they're going to be the experts on this subject, but just to be able to share my experiences as a parent, as a business owner, and as a community member.
Good morning. Thanks for being here. My name is Jill Lofall, and I grew up in Morgan Park. My dad was a steel plant worker, and I continued my involvement with the Duluth Public Schools all the way through my early learning, and then I went to UMD and got a degree in theater, speech, English, and communications, and then that led me to a job in Duluth in 1984 after a few years in Barnum and in ESCO, and I have been an English teacher and a speech teacher for 30 plus years in Duluth. I retired in 2017, never thinking that I would be in a position here on a panel sharing my love of education and my experience as a teacher. But my community really gathered around me and asked if I would consider stepping into a school board election. And I really didn't see myself here, but now I can't see myself anywhere else. I think it's important on a school board to have the voices and the experience of teachers. We lend a different lens. But again, I'm here too because I believe in kids. And I believe that Duluth, like Superintendent Mega said, is we're just at a crossroads. And I can see the levy making such a huge impact. And we are so close to allowing so many opportunities for our students that it just gives me great passion to be here to talk. So welcome.
We all have microphones. Oh, we don't. Okay.
Got a couple, yeah.
I gotcha.
Thank you very much for the introductions. Appreciate your time and energy putting into this. So I'll turn it over to the superintendent to give us an overview of the referendum proposal.
Sure, thank you, Matt. And again, we appreciate the panel being here and appreciate all of you coming to listen to the information about the referendum. We have a very, very important referendum. The vote is on November 7th, 2003, coming up in just a few weeks. And it's really important for us to make sure that the public is well informed about what the ask is. We don't take this ask lightly. We know that this is a time when people have had their housing prices raised, which has meant that their assessments have gone up, which has meant that their taxes have gone up. So we have strived to make sure that we're making an ask that's very reasonable and is also prudent, thinking about the fiscal responsibilities that we have as a district to our taxpayers and our community. So where is this coming from? Why are we asking this? And really, a big part of it has to do with what everybody in the community has put together. We worked very hard over the course of the past 3 years to put together a strategic roadmap that outlines 3 strategic directions for the district. Very important directions, and they're directions which we're deeply focused on. And those are supporting every student, advancing equity, and improving systems. And we have a very deep operational plan that puts that into effect. And it's important that we have the resources that the district is going to need to move forward. And so that is really the main point of why we're focusing on this. We also recognize that our high school schedule could be improved. We know that our graduation rates are not where they need to be. They're not where they deserve to be, especially if we think about our students that are historically underserved by the district. And what happens with our high school schedule right now is it's a 6-period schedule. So if a student begins to struggle in their sophomore or freshman early years, it's almost impossible for them to make up those lost credits unless they go through Herculean efforts of summer school and online classes. We also want to make sure that we have the extensive opportunities as far as engagement and elective choice for that high school level. And then finally, our technology program is really, really in need. If you remember, when I started during the pandemic, I was really surprised and amazed by the heart and work that the teachers were putting in to serve our kids. They were delivering packets, photocopied packets by school bus because our students didn't have the devices that they needed. There was a referendum in 2018 that was narrowly lost by 1,183 votes, and that would have allowed us to have the devices that our students are using now. We used temporary funding from the federal government that runs out at the end of June to make sure that we had the devices our students needed, as well as the other supports for technology that were needed. But those are sorely lacking, and there's something that need to be funded ongoing. There needs to be a replacement cycle for those devices. We don't have a replacement cycle for those devices, and we really only have a budget prior to the COVID money of $250,000 for technology. That's really bare bones and does not allow for individual student devices. In fact, we were at a point of not being able to replace the smart boards and other things. So when we think about the technology needs of our students, when we think about the engagement needs of our students, it's very, very important that we're focused on that. And technology isn't just the devices in our hands. I have a Chromebook in front of me, but a lot of it is what's behind the walls. We need cell phone boosters, we need Wi-Fi, we need to make sure that we have the cybersecurity elements that are needed. We frequently hear, in fact, many of us who might attend a major university here in Minnesota just received an email about a security and data breach. So school districts are facing data breaches. We want to make sure that we keep the individual information about our students and families safe through cybersecurity. And so that's another important means. We also need to make sure that putting a device in a teacher's hand or in a student's hand, it needs to be well supported. It can be just a fancy pencil if it's not really well supported. So we need to make sure that we have the digital innovation specialists and people who can help with the instructional technology to make sure that it's as deeply engaging as it needs to be. And we've also learned that our students learn differently. We've learned through the pandemic that there's a lot of engagement and a lot of personalization that can happen through technology. So we want to make sure that we're taking the best of technology and moving it forward with solid support. So we also, with that COVID relief money, were able to fund certain positions in academics and mental health. So we had positions in academics that were supportive through reading interventionists and math interventionists and what we call multi-tiered support specialists. And those people were there to sweep in, and when somebody slipped through the cracks, they were there to help them and make sure that they had the intervention and support that they needed. Those positions are not slated to continue without funding from the referendum. Those are very much needed. We also used that funding to support mental health. We used the multi-tiered systems to support interventionists. Those were people as well who supported that, as well as additional counselors and social workers to meet the mental health needs of our students. And what we've seen is that the pandemic, the funding that we had, it was very, very helpful to start many things that our students needed, but they're basics, they're foundational pieces that are needed by our students each and every day. And I think we also know that the pandemic went on for another year longer than people thought it was going to. So the money that was originally allocated in the early part of the pandemic, that was meant based on thinking that the pandemic was coming to an end, yet it went on for another year. We need to make sure that we take care of our kids so that they can be actively engaged in our community. And when Matt mentioned that this is an economic choice for Duluth as well. When we think about us, we are one of the top employers in the city. We're the fourth largest employer in the city, so we are a large entity. But we also prepare the future workforce. We prepare the future citizens. And when we have people that need to be employed to care for us through Essentia or the ports or Cirrus or many other areas, we want to make sure that we have the best and brightest, well-prepared students that we can have. And so that's part of the reason why we're asking the community for this referendum. So without that funding, and we like to focus on what we get, which is the supports that we have through academics, mental health, technology, and that improved high school system. But there's also the aspect of what will happen if the referendum does not pass. And that means that we will have a reduction in force at the end of the year. That there will be at least, there are 17 positions that are currently funded out of ESSER that would not be funded, and we'd need to consider reduction in that area. We also will have forecasted for the next 4 years a $4 to $5 million budget deficit. $4 to $5 million each year out of a $132 million budget. So if you think about that, over $20 to $25 million to be reduced out of a $132 million budget, that's going to have significant impacting on our programming, our staffing, and our ability to meet the needs of the learners that we serve. So that is why we are going forward with this. But the referendum, it has two questions. It's a little bit complicated. We could have gone forward with a regular, straight technology referendum. If we had done that, the cost to taxpayers would be roughly double what it is that we're asking for. So what we did was we worked with our financial group, and we're asking a two-question referendum. The first question is refinancing some of our bonds. So basically we have money that we have borrowed from the district budget that we pay out of our general fund, that we're paying that out each year. And what we're going to do is we're going to refinance that and actually pay it off more quickly than we would. We'll be paying that debt off by 2030. So that debt, well, it's just a stair-stepping down, and it's going to make a really positive impact for our students and have less taxes for our taxpayers than we would if we asked it straight up. The second question is a technology referendum, and that funds a little over $5 million for technology each year. So it's a total of $7.9 million that we have for funding for our schools. So $7.9 million per year for the next 10 years. So that's our ask, but we know it's a big ask. We know it has impact, and that's why we want to make sure that people are really well informed about what happens. So voting, you can vote now. You can vote early. There's information on our website, and that website has a lot of information. It's futureforward709.org. futureforward709.org. You can find information on where to vote. There's a tax calculator, so you can put in your individual parcel and find out exactly what you would be paying for taxes with the referendum. And it also has a huge breakdown of what we're doing and why. I think another question that I get quite often is, the state just had big increases in allocation of funding for the schools. What does that mean? And really, the state gave us a 4% and 2% increase in funding for the next 2 years. And really, we usually get a 2% to begin with. So really, we have a 2% extra 1 year, which is great. And there were a lot of other funding things that are beneficial to students and staff, but don't necessarily have the same impact on technology and mental health and academics. We have things like universal lunch, which is incredible. It's incredible to have that for our kids, but it doesn't necessarily result in some of the additional things that we're discussing. Also, if you look at funding, state funding for the past 20 years, from 2003 to 2023, funding has increased, but not at the same rate as inflation. And if you look at where we would be at based on an inflationary increase, we are falling $1,400 short per pupil, $1,400 short per pupil than if it just kept up with inflation. And how much does that equal for a school district with 8,000 students? It's about $11 million per year. So when we say we're asking for $7.9 million to make up part of that $11 million gap, that is why when we say that the state still, they've done a lot, but the state also asks local taxpayers to take on some of the burden as well. That's the way that things are funded for education. We get some federal funding, we get some state funding, and then it also comes up to asking our local community, which has been hugely supportive of our schools. We've gone through challenging times over the past few years. We've worked hard to put together a strategic roadmap, and we're ready to launch in a future-forward way. And I believe that this ask is something that taxpayers really need to carefully consider.
Thank you, John. That was fantastic. Appreciate the overview. John S., I'm going to toss a question to you right out of the gate. At the chamber, one of the things that we keep a close eye on is responsible taxation. Can you speak to that tension between making sure that we are responsible with our taxation with the value that this could provide for the district and our students?
All right. Yeah, thank you, Matthew. I mean, obviously, I'm a community member like everybody else, and I too will be impacted by a somewhat higher tax bill if this passes. I want to emphasize, however, that the average price of a house is about $289,000, and this would mean a $1 per month increase for question one for the refinancing. It would be $11 per month, actually close to the $12 a month increase for the second tier for the technology. This is as a percentage of my taxes and my monthly expenses. This is actually pretty small. And when I think about the return we're getting on this, it just seems like to me, it's a no-brainer. I don't think of this as sort of money going to the district as much as it's an investment in our community. And I firmly believe that the money comes back. It comes back to all of us in terms of more job opportunities, in terms of just like happier, healthier, more democratically engaged populace. So I want to acknowledge that it is a challenge. It's always hard to have a tax increase. But this is a tax increase that really does make up for itself. And actually, I would argue it comes back double-fold or triple-fold, although don't quote me on that. I haven't done the economic analysis. The other question then is about fiscal responsibility. And I do think that ISD 709 has proven itself to be a very fiscally responsible operation. I have really profound faith. I mean, having been a parent in the district and seen how the district has been operated over the years, having seen really just incredibly robust and thoughtful debate on the part of the school board, I have really strong confidence in the accountability mechanisms and in this district's history of shepherding its funds. And so I think every dollar that goes to the district will be well spent. I'm very confident in that. So I hope that covers some of it's a complicated question, but those are two of my thoughts about it.
Thank you, John. Yeah. Lindsay and then Jill, could you each, in your own lane and experience with the school, which both of you have deep experience with the school district, speak to the benefits of students if this referendum were to pass?
Absolutely. So I think part of, we're going to have lots of conversation about the impact on students and the benefit to students. I also think when you are in a fully funded district, that has the potential to have you become a preferred employer. And I think that's so important to have our school district be a preferred employer in our community, to have our district buildings be preferred places of employment. And a lot of that comes from being in a fully funded environment, an environment that doesn't have that additional stress because there's interventionists that are able to support our classroom teachers. There's all those additional supports that are happening to help students, but also help our educators. And we want the strongest, the best, the most talented educators. We want the most talented and excited administrators in our schools. And so I think there's a benefit to our students by having that as well, and then an overall benefit to our community. In addition, those additional dollars, when we're thinking about expanding, the potential for expanding offerings, my personal experience, I have a junior in high school, and this year she had to make the decision between being in an advanced choir, and her post-secondary aspirations are musical theater and vocal performance, so advanced choir is something that's very important to her, and taking a third-year language. So those two offerings in the building that she's in are offered in the same hour, and there's no other opportunity to take one of those classes. So an expanded offering, I think, is going to be really important, and I think technology can support that too. If there was potentially during a study hall hour, if there was that class offered at another school, could she tap into that? Are there other opportunities that could be grown and developed through those dollars? So maybe expanding to a 7-period day, maybe just expanding those offerings could benefit those students in an additional way. I think we also saw during the pandemic, the district do a really phenomenal job of being good stewards of the dollars that were given to them and really meeting the demands of the community. So the community was sharing, we need additional technology, we need additional mental health supports, we need additional supports in the classroom and outside of the classroom in our schools when our students return. And so listening to the community and being able to deliver on those things, using those dollars to deliver those in those spaces that weren't currently being done, they weren't, it's not that they weren't needs then, but it was highlighted so much during the pandemic. And so now that we know that those needs are there, now that we know that we have the capability to meet those needs, continuing that funding for those opportunities I think is really critical as well.
Thanks, Lindsay.
Oh, sorry, I turned it off.
So what can I add to all of that? So the benefits to our kids too, just kind of tapping back into what Lindsay said, is those those opportunities. So, we're looking at a high school kind of schedule. And again, that's going to turn over to a committee. In 2018, we did an extensive committee. I just came onto the board then, and there had already been in place a robust study done by Dr. Carey, who was leading our curriculum at the time, and a number of our principals and teachers and staff. And they really did an in-depth study of what an expanded day would look like. And so I want to just share with the community that there's been great work done, and we could really, with the levy, really do significant improvements and offerings in the high school that will impact students, especially in career and tech ed, and in just the availability. So for my years teaching at Denfeld and with Lindsay's experience with her own children, that opportunity to look at what a different day would look like. Doesn't necessarily, we always kind of slap on that 7 period, and that gives us at least a framework to understand what we're looking for. It's not a longer day. We're still going to be there from 7:45 to 4:45, but it is, how do you maximize that time in that high school setting that students are able to tap into some of the electives. And we have, I've taught in the district for over 30 years, and we have the same electives and the same offerings, whether it's at the high end for advanced physics, or whether it's our new offerings in pre-engineering and in graphic design and in medical. We have those at all of our high school campuses, but because of the reduced hour of 6, the students can't take it. So we still have robust electives. I think there's another question coming up from the chamber about, what would this money buy in electives or in advance? And I know that there will be some potential for that, but it really is in giving our students the opportunity to tap into the hours that they can take those. And then the benefits to students, again, I've always said this from the very beginning, ESSER the federal and the state ESSER monies gave us a glimpse of what fully funded schools look like. And they gave dollars generously, and I think our district leadership spent them responsibly. And we actually got a glimpse of what social workers, counselors, interventionists, they were needed before ESSER ever happened. Nobody wants to say that the pandemic was a blessing. It wasn't. But it did allow us to see what can be done if you've got the right funding. So to have to step backwards and not have these positions because we don't financially have the robust budget if we don't pass the levy, just makes me want to get out and share this message so much more. We've been at football games, we've been at PTA meetings, we've talked with staff across our district, and we'll continue to work with forums like this and any opportunity we can to share the importance of the levy for our students and our community.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to John S., who's not only a parent with students in the district, but is in higher education. Workforce is a critical issue to the chamber. We hear it, Dan and I, in every conversation we have. And in your role in higher education, do you see this referendum as a way to improve that pipeline to workforce, whether it's through traditional higher education or through trades or 2-year programs? Do you see that as a way to impact that?
Well, yes. But to expand on that, I do, as a teacher or as a faculty member at University of Minnesota Duluth, one thing I'm very conscious of is this idea that every high school kid is really going in, after they graduate, they're going into a competition for admission into colleges and universities. They're going to a competition for admission into trades programs and into jobs out there. And so, I mean, in a sense, what I think of when I think of the levy is that the students in Duluth are, we're prepping them to go off into job markets and admissions kind of proceedings at universities. And we're competing with other high school districts around the state and around the region. And let me tell you, a lot of those other school districts have levies and actually have higher levies than we do. Some of them have lower levies or none, but we should think about how we can best equip our Duluth kids to go off into that world beyond K-12 education, and we should give them we should give them as much as we can to go off and really represent themselves well against those kids in our region coming from those other districts, many of which have actually gone to their local taxpayers and actually gotten much higher levies than we've been able to do here. So I guess I'd say I'd love to see, we have really great Duluth ISD 709 students at UMD, and they have a great time. And I like it, but I see the other kids from other parts of the state, and I know that they're coming in with other types of preparation. So let's think of this as a way to really go out and really represent ourselves well in what really is, at the end of the day, a competition for giving our current kids just great futures as future adults.
Thanks, John. To the superintendent, you talked about some of these things in your opening kind of presentation, but I want to delve deeper into a couple of things. So regarding the existing debt and the refinancing of that, can you talk about how the process of refinancing parts of the district's existing debt work? What safeguards are in place to ensure that this refinancing will be beneficial for the long-term financial health of ISD 709?
Thank you. And again, I explained it to some degree, so I won't go too deeply into the part about how the debt works. But by asking the question this way, by refinancing our debt, it allows us to have a significantly less impact on our taxpayer. So by making sure that we pay off our debt by 2030, that will have impact on our bond rating. Bond rating is kind of like a credit score for a school district. And I'm really proud to say that since I came here, the school district was very close to bankruptcy, to statutory operating debt. We had about $300,000 in our general fund balance. But the thing is that most school districts of our size would have closer to 10 million. So we had used much of our funding for that. But we have worked incredibly hard as a school district from a financial perspective to build our bond rating and to build our credit score. Basically, we had a double jump by Moody's, so don't just trust us. I mean, we might just be saying nice things about the school district, but Moody's is one of the largest financial analysis companies in the world, and they gave us a double increase in our bond rating, which is really a double seal of approval saying you are all working, trying to do what's best, trying to do what's right, for not just for the kids of Duluth, but thinking about the fiscal responsibility that we have at the school district. I also, sometimes, I'll be honest, I love Duluth. I grew up on Lake Superior. Sometimes in Duluth, we talk a lot about the past. We talk about past plans of certain colors or things like that. We all know. But it's important for us to really think about the future. What is it that we want for the future of our kids too? Not just dwelling on the past, not looking at the past mistakes, but also I highly encourage the board and community to hold me tightly accountable and hold our team tightly accountable. With our strategic plan, we put together a progress monitoring calendar that calls for deliverables each month in each of those three areas, including improvements of systems, including our budget work. So we need to make sure that we're using those systems, those publicly facing systems, to hold ourselves accountable. Our books are open, our work is open to the public, and we want to make sure that you can see every dime that we spend.
Thank you. To Lindsay or Jill, can you talk a little bit more about this investment and how it can lead to academic and mental health support positions, new course offerings, and an integrated technology program?
Well, we know, is this going to work? Okay.
You're a theater person.
I know, I can. So I could say, repeat that question. How will the levy and the money that comes into the district because of it work to improve what we offer our students and what we can give? And there's just so many opportunities that we can continue to thrive, and our kids can be joyful, and they can be nourished, and they can grow into who they are and what they want to do. This money will
be able to keep those positions that we've hired for ESSER. And I think that one of the things we haven't tapped into is just the positivity this will bring to our teachers and our staff. Our teachers are the main deliverers of our educational system, and with the kind of funding we've got, I'm hoping that their communication within their buildings and their principal leadership, we are, in fact, this afternoon, we will hear from our principals of every one of our buildings. I think all of them will be here, or some of them. The continuous improvement teams will come before the board to share their vision and their needs and their ways that they are going to take today's, this year's monies and then implement success in their classrooms. And so I think that with the accountability, and again, I want to go back to that achievement support for every student, the advanced equity and that improving systems. Every month you can come to a board meeting and you will hear those 3 topics addressed by our leadership, by our teachers and our principals. And I just think that the organization, I think it was said best too last spring by Principal Tom Tuscan that came to present to the board, and he said that he was so impressed with the focus that our district is taking, that this is the first time he can remember in his leadership that all principals, all leadership were on board with PBIS, which is Positive Behavioral Intervention Strategies, and our multiple tiers system of support for our students, and that we are on a projection of consistency of every leader in our district being held accountable and understanding and leading their staffs to have success in the classroom. So I think that's where the benefit is going to come from the levy, is to give us confidence in how we can help our staff and help our principals, because they are truly the leaders of their district, of their building, and you'll see that accountability within our system and on our kids.
Thanks. And Lindsay, from your perspective, who has been so involved in the district, has 2 daughters in the district, what does success with this look like to you?
I think success will look like additional offerings. I think that success is going to look like technology that's keeping up with where we want our students to be when they leave the district. As a community, it's so important for, and we've talked about it so many times already, even here at this table today, how important it is to our community to be able to be proud of the public school system that we have. So whether or not you have a child in the public school system, whether or not you're invested in spending time in the buildings right now. It's so important to be able to grow our Duluth community through being able to create our strong public school system. I think also, we talk a lot about, and John shared, just this historical hurt that we hold on to in our community, and we do it really good, like super good. And so to be able to let go of that, to be able to look to the future, to be able to move forward, those are such important things that we can do together as a community and that we need to do together as a community. The leadership of the district, the school board members that are on the board right now serving our community, none of them were part of and I can say this because I'm not part of the district, but none of them were part of the district when any of those decisions that we are holding on to or holding grudges against were made. And so to be able to look forward and know that this is something that happens throughout the state, throughout the country, levies and referendums are common practice. This is how school districts tap into their communities and encourage their communities to invest with them and alongside them. And so that's something that I think when this levy and referendum passes, that is going to be a measure of success as well. Just knowing that our community has been able to move forward and to look to the future.
Thank you. All of you are so articulate, and I could ask you a million questions, and we have more questions, but in the interest of time and to give the audience a chance to ask questions, I'll end with a final 2. The first for John S. How can the community, if they so choose, support this?
Thank you, Matthew. Just a second. Sorry. Okay. Well, one very straightforward way, if you care about this, and if you care about the empowering our kids and our school district and our great schools and educators, The Yes Committee is functioning basically as a political campaign, getting out the vote to vote in favor of this levy referendum. And we are eager to recruit people onto our leadership committee. We're eager to recruit people to kind of help volunteer to get the word out, and we're also accepting campaign contributions to our fund. Every money that you send to us will be used to generate publicity in support of this levy referendum. So I'd be happy to share the levy committee's contact info. We've got a really dedicated group of parents, of educators, of community members. And one really straightforward way, don't just vote for the levy, but encourage your friends to vote for the levy and support us in an organized appeal to the voters of Duluth.
Thank you. And so we'll finish with the superintendent, and I have two questions for you. One on the mechanics of the referendum. There are two questions. Is it an up or down vote to both as a slate, or can voters vote for one or the other?
That's a great question. And so the two questions are really seen as a package. They are something that voters can vote individually on. So it could be something that they say yes to one and no to the other. But really, when we looked at the comprehensive needs of the district, they are multifaceted, and so they're built into both of the questions. So really, even though there's two questions that can be approved up or down individually, and one is more focused on the ESSER positions and the ESSER spending that we have, and the other is focused more on technology, those are seen as the combined needs of the district. So if one passes and one doesn't, we'll be kind of scrimping and trying to save and figure out how can we make some of both of them work. But really, if we want to fully fund our schools and make sure that we have what our students need, we need to consider both of those questions seriously. I can't say vote yes or vote no. I'm sure you can probably guess which way I will be voting, and I wouldn't be asking the public to make this tough choice if I didn't believe that our schools needed it. And so when we think about what people can do to get out more information, as John mentioned, there are yes vote groups. If there's a no vote group, it's important to make sure that we're sharing information no matter what. And I would say as a chamber, since this is a chamber event, this allows us great opportunity for businesses to potentially share the information as well. So businesses could send out information from the school district about the referendum in general, or they could send out yes vote, no vote information. And the chamber could decide to endorse or not endorse the referendum as well. I think those are ways that would be very impactful on that. But again, those two questions are seen as a combined package, but it's not an up or down on one will mean up or down on the other.
Thank you. And so final question, mentioned the chamber, mentioned businesses. As I started out by saying, the value of our most precious resource, our children, and thinking about them in terms of future workforce, balanced with the tension of taxation and responsible taxation. At a time when our macroeconomy has experienced some inflation, we see what it does for the average property taxpayer. Can you articulate what you would say to somebody who might have a higher valuation, or a commercial property taxpayer who might pay more? Again, articulate in your thoughts the value of that increased levy on somebody who might be paying more.
So I would look at it from a perspective of, are we interested more in short-term gain and avoidance of taxes, or are we really investing deeply in the future of Duluth? Because the future of Duluth needs well-prepared citizens. We need to make sure that we have a workforce that is able to serve the growing communities. When we think about Essentia growing and St. Luke's and the Port and Cirrus, they're asking for highly trained workers. They will not stay with us if we don't have highly trained workers. We will not have growth as a city if we don't have highly trained workers who are able to take those places. So really, I would look at it as very much an economic impact on our community. Do we believe in Duluth, or do we want to have lower taxes for the short term? That's really an important question for us to ask. However, we do realize it's an impact. We do realize that there's sacrifice. And we also know that there are people there out in the community that struggle financially, or even people that have great wealth that are having a hard time paying those taxes. So we know it's an important ask, and we just ask that people become as well informed as possible so you can make the choice that's right for you.
Thank you, Superintendent. And we'll thank the panel at the end, but I want to make sure we have time for questions from the audience. We've got about 15 minutes, so the floor is yours. I'd be remiss if I didn't mention our Assistant Superintendent Bonds is here too, so thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Could
people introduce themselves too, just so we have an idea of who everybody is?
So my name is Carolyn Haney, and I'm actually a native of Duluth. I'm a product of the schools as well as we have 3 children that have gone through the public school system. I am a proponent of public schools. I think they're fantastic in so many ways. I guess my key question is, I'm the director of Duluth Core Learning, and so we look at alternative ways to approach learning and students that learn in different ways. And although I have some high flyers in my children, and I also have a son who learned in a different way. And so my question is really around the idea of how is it different? What are we doing differently in the district? Because I can say that what worked for my daughters didn't necessarily work for my son. And it was a struggle trying to get his needs met within the district. And sometimes more is not enough. Just putting more money into more technology, putting more money into more mental health. And actually, I was a school counselor for 20 years in the public school system. And so I really believe in that piece of it. But where is it different? And how are we going to approach those different learning styles and create that equity across the district? I've seen different districts. I've worked in them. We have worked, we're working with Denfeld, in trying to create some of that equity. But a longer work day would have been great for or a longer school day would have been great for my daughters because they had a hard time choosing between language and music. But that wouldn't necessarily have fixed it for our son. So I guess what's different?
Thank you. Good question.
That's a really great question. And having grown up in significant poverty myself, and also having had a son who had learned very differently, I want to make sure that Duluth Public Schools doesn't just meet the middle of the road kids, that we're able to meet every single student's needs. That's why the first goal of our strategic plan is supporting every student. And that means not just a generic vanilla serving of what works for most kids. We need to figure out how are we tapping into our advanced learners and giving them the supports they need. How are we making sure that our struggling learners are getting what they need? And also, you mentioned differences, different types of instruction. Right now, thinking about our language immersion program is one example. We have Ojibwe immersion and Spanish immersion, and Lowell Elementary is bursting at the seams because people are wanting different types of instruction. They're wanting choice. I think it's important for us as a district to also explore other options like environmental learning, project-based learning. Those are things that keep people in the school district and give people choice. And then you mentioned as well the potential extended day and what that means as far as ability to take different types of classes. Right now, we do have an option, and it's called 0 hour, which is positive for the kids that can make it to school. The problem with 0 hour is that kids need to have their own transportation, and it's a great idea and a great opportunity for the kids that can make it, but it creates an equity issue for the kids that can't make it, the kids who don't necessarily have a ride or aren't able to do that. So we want to make sure that every student has opportunity and choice and can be engaged in electives that really matter to them, because I think that that's when students are engaged in their learning, that's when you see the difference. We learned during the pandemic, it's not about how much time you sit in a seat, it's about how deeply you're engaged in your learning. So it's important, and I say that as a parent, I say that as a person who made it, despite some struggles, that it's our moral imperative to offer things in different ways so that we can better serve our kids.
Can I kind of jump in on that a little bit?
Yes.
So not that I'm a big expert, but again, because of my teaching career, you know, we have to kind of look too at the longevity of the ask that we're asking right now. So we're talking a lot about passing this levy right now for 2023 into 2024, but this is a 10-year ask. So for me, when I look at your question, and thanks for it too, I just look at what could potentially be down the road for us. In our elementaries, we do have our E-squared learning opportunities, but they could be expanded to fit the needs of our youngest scholars as they grow up, that opportunity for more enrichment. I think we have talked at the district level and at the school board level so much about offering more staff development, more professional development for our teachers. And I could see where down the road, when we see the growth and hopefully we'll get more students enrolled into our schools because they see it as a preferred school district to go to because we're healthy, we're positive, our kids are experiencing well, then we can offer, you know, even more opportunities for our staff to learn about, and they do. I mean, I was a project-based teacher. I went to every staff development I could to learn how to differentiate my teaching style, and we've got staff that do that, and we can continue to encourage that. And I just think of the opportunities of our career and tech ed expansion, and just the other thing too is just we have to educate our community that those offerings are there. So many of parents that come in for parent-teacher conferences when their kids are in my 9th grade class don't understand that we have horticulture, that we have automotive, that we have pre-engineering, that we have medical technology. And we just have to get the word out about the incredible opportunities that can arise in career and tech ed, which then can also tap into some of our learners that learn in a different way. My husband's a para in the district, and one of the most severely leveled opportunities for students to attend. And I just see how they too enrich the students' lives by the way that they are, you know, shepherded in and encouraged. And so there's just so many facets within our district to try to improve the lives of every student every day. And so that's my input on that.
Thank you. Question? Other questions? Yes, please.
Hi, Molly Nett. I'm newer to the community. I have 2 little girls at Lowell in the Spanish program. Love it, thank you. There's a lot of positivity that you guys are talking about with this program so far, like yay, sold. What are some of the things that you're hearing on the negative side? Like, you know, you talked about that there's the yes committee and there may be a no committee. What is like one of the biggest things that you're hearing from the no side that we might be able to consider?
Good question.
It's a great question. John, looked like you were ready to answer, but I'll throw something out and if others want to share. I would say that what I've seen sometimes, and I'm not trying to insult the negative part of it or the negative campaign because I want to be equal, is a lot of times what I'm seeing on social media and other places, it's just comments like, I'm not going to support this, I don't trust the district's caused problem for us and grief related to the red plan. My apologies. So I think that sometimes it's a little bit of a generalization of, we don't trust you, we're not going to trust the schools, we're not going to invest. And part of what we're really trying to say is it's a new day, it's a new era for Duluth. If we want Duluth to be future thinking, we need to be future forward. And so that's part of where we're coming from. But there is a tax impact. And I think that that's important. And I think some people would say, we don't trust the district, and so we can't trust the district with this increase because they're not being careful financial stewards. But I would again go back to that Moody rating and say, when one of the most trusted analysis groups in the entire world gives you a double bump in your bond rating, which is like your credit score, that says that we're doing some things right. And I want to say thank you to Simone Zunich, who is our Executive Director of Business Services, for all the financial work she's done, as well as our previous CFO, Kathy Erickson, because it really did a lot of work to right the ship. And so I would ask people that are commenting about our finances, take a look at us now.
I would just add, I'm going to acknowledge something sort of abstract in general, which is that For the history of our public education system in the United States, which goes back about 150 years, and which I think has on some been very, very successful, there have always been people in our country who've been opposed, who were unhappy when public schools established themselves, who felt disturbed by public schools after they came into place. And some of that resistance to public schools has legitimate basis, and some of it I think is maybe a little bit less legitimate, but I just want to acknowledge that there's always been in every community a group of people who felt outside of or unrepresented by what the public schools were doing. So I would say that if you're going to hear a negative, sometimes it's just going to be a preordained sort of negative that public schools are bad, and then a lot of explanations about why, or maybe attempts to apply that to our actual district. But I want to say that I would want to fight that. I want to dispute that idea that public schools are bad. I think that when you look at what public schools have accomplished in their long history, they've really made America, a lot of the good things about America are coming from this incredible tradition we have as a country that's supported strong public schools. And I would say furthermore that when it comes to public school systems, America was always a pioneer. There are very few other countries back 150 years ago that tried as hard to educate as many people as the American public schools did, of course with the one glaring exception of a lamentable history of racial segregation in public schools. So I want to acknowledge that too. But looking at it and looking at what our current public schools are trying to do, I think we have a very, very strong argument against the naysayers, against the constituencies that have for a long time been mobilized against them.
I think too, to respond to your question as well, there is this more generic response, right? There's this, to what both of the Johns had mentioned. I think it's so important for voters to be able to engage in conversation with families who are part of the district, who are experiencing the district. The task of the district of a public school district is to educate all, right? So there are no limitations, there are no boundaries. It's access to education for everyone. And there are lots and lots of families who are choosing Duluth Public Schools. So we're a family that probably has access to a lot of different choices, and we're choosing Duluth Public Schools. We're choosing Duluth Public Schools on the western side of the city. We're making those choices, and so I encourage voters to have those conversations with families who are experiencing it right now, not maybe families who experience historical hurt. I think to be able to talk to people, engage with people who are living it now, who are with educators right now, who are with students right now, who are engaged in the community right now, who needs to rely on public education.
One more thing on things that we're hearing. Looking at different electoral races, we have a board election as well, and 4 of the 6 candidates have voiced strong support for the referendum. 2 have voiced concern about the referendum. So I would look to those voices to consider what's being said there as well. I would also point out that both of our mayoral candidates have publicly responded that they strongly support the referendum, and so it's very important to think about when we're asking who's going to serve us, what do they believe, and there's unified support from that perspective.
I would just chime in with your question, Molly, too, that I think a lot of times there's, just like in every aspect of our country right now, there's misinformation. And I think school finance is one of the most challenging parts of our district, or of any district, to understand fully all of the funding responsibilities of a school district. And we are so fortunate to have a really strong finance and HR business department right now. And they've operated with, always trying to fill in the next position. We have an incredible opportunity in our HR and our business finance to really share with our community the important and the state statute and following all the guidelines of the Department of Education for funding schools. So it's easy for some community people to assume they know school finance when they really can pick and choose what they understand. And I trust our finance department. And again, going back to the bond rating and just these are college educated
professionally developed, HR and business experts. And they are the ones sharing with us the needs and the financial best choices to spend the dollars that Duluth taxpayers have trusted with the district. And so I want to turn to them and encourage our community to pay attention to the school board meetings that we have every month. They're on board book. We're very transparent. People try to say that the district isn't transparent, but all of our meetings are taped and shown the very next day. And as we move to our new district service building, we'll start to, I think, live stream again so that you can watch. But I just think that financially, people want to somewhat be negative about what the school's spending is, when in actuality, they try to project what they know about school finance, and they're not always knowledgeable. And so I can't wait to help the community and the new board members that are coming on board to understand school finance the way that members of the current school board have spent their years. Some of our members of the school board have been on the board for 10 years, 12 years, and they have continually gone to opportunities to learn more about school finance. And so that's why we can support what our HR and business community, our experts in our district are doing with our school finances. And so I just want to applaud them. And then again, that negative voice kind of wants to spin something about what they understand school finance to be, which really it isn't accurate. And they continue to say that in media and within social media. And that just continues that kind of negativity about our school finances.
Thank you, Board Member Lopel. Good question. I mean, you had something for everybody.
Yeah.
So we'll do one more question, Stephanie. We're a little bit past 10, and then I want to make sure that our superintendent can close us out. So, Stephanie, please.
Hi, I'm Stephanie. I am a former student and employee and parent, among other things, in the district. And I guess I have a question. You mentioned specifically kind of inequities involving 0 hour, and I am wondering, I want to ask if this will specifically provide transportation for 0 hour, and then how else will this address achievement gaps and inequities across the district?
Thank you for the great question. And I would say the 0 hour, I'll start first with 0 hour and then I'll go out to the macro. So 0 hour is something that is offered for individuals so that individuals can take an elective choice class prior to the beginning of the school day. And that sounds like a really good thing. And for many of us who have a second car that our kids can drive, or we have the flexibility to drop off a student or what may be, it works out just fine. But a lot of students in our community don't have that opportunity. So transportation is a huge issue. And so will this address 0 hour? What I would like to see is an expansion of the day so that we don't have 0 hour, so that the needs of all students are met every day, no matter what it is, without that need for extra transportation. So it wouldn't be that we would provide transportation for 0 hour, it would be that 0 hour would be infused into the day so that every kid has the choices that they need and want to have those engaging opportunities to follow career pathways and other things. When we think about how does it focus on other areas of equity, we have some inequities. We have some significant inequities in Duluth that are mirrored across the country, but there are specific deep inequities that really need to be focused on to make sure that all of our students' needs are met, particularly our students who are underserved. And when we think about what we were able to do with the funding from the ESSER funding, that was focused on students who were hardest hit by the pandemic. And what we found was the students who have always been historically underserved were even more underserved during the pandemic throughout the country. The gaps got wider. So what we're saying is we want to keep the reading interventionists, the math interventionists, the social workers, the counselors, the people who have been there to support through multi-tiered systems of support. We need to make sure that we have those students supporting. I bet everybody here in the audience, if you don't have a child that has been affected with their learning or their social emotional growth through the pandemic of the past few years, you know a family who does. And so we need to we're not done yet. We need to make sure that we have those supports so that we can not just lift all boats, that we're also focusing specifically on who are the underserved students. And by having advancing equity as the second point in our strategic roadmap, that is calling it out, not just saying we're supporting every student, but we're also going to focus on advancing equity. Because if you just say it's generally what we do, it's not going to be specific enough. So we need specific measures to make sure that we're meeting the needs of each and every student. And I want the board, current board members, future board members, everybody, to hold me and the system deeply accountable to meet the needs of those students.
Thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. Okay, I want to first thank the panel. Thank you very much. You can tell it's a very well-educated, articulate group, and probably each could have answered all of those questions. So a round of applause for our panel, please. Superintendent, is there anything in closing that you'd want to add?
I think we've covered a lot. Again, the 4 areas are really important. Support for academics, support for mental health and social emotional learning, support for an advanced, improved high school schedule that meets the needs of every learner, and the technology for the future of our students. So those are really the main things that we're focusing on through this referendum. Remember, you can vote now. You can vote in person on November 7th, but you can vote now. So if I'm asking for 3 levels of consideration, first level is become informed and vote. Second level of consideration is really thinking about if I can help inform others a little bit, reshare some of the postings, reshare the information that you're seeing on social media related to the referendum so that other people can be informed and really make their own choice. And then third, I would say if you are feeling strongly for or against the referendum, that you consider advocating very strongly and maybe becoming part of one of those groups that is either for or against the referendum based on your needs. Because it's really important, this is an incredibly important choice for our community. When I mentioned what we need to do to march forward, to get the job done for our kids, we want to make sure that our teachers have the resources to make that march and to achieve what we can do for our kids. So really, it's about Duluth. It's not about the past, it's about the future. And so I look for everybody to take a look at futureforward709.org. Thank you.
Thank you very much.